All right, Corey, taking a look at this Wayne State-Nebraska-Kearney game, what were your impressions of Kyle Schultz replacing Silas Fluin?
I think he did a good job. He got things done. He rushed the ball well. He was efficient through the air. I think he's going to be a good replacement for longtime starter Silas Fluin.
Looking at the NSIC South, what do you think are Wayne State's chances of winning that division?
I think they could be potential dark horses, but they got Mankato, Augustana, and Winona in that South Conference, so if they want to win, they're going to have to play some tough football to come out on top.
The game ball.
I am a golden god!
Alright, it's time for me and Corey to hand out our game balls, so Corey, how about we start with you?
My game ball is going to go to the young WSU quarterback Evan Aber on his first collegiate college win. He was actually 19 for 36 with 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, and better yet, 0 picks. That's why he gets my game ball.
My game ball is going to go to Richard Daniel, a defensive end from Wayne State. He had a huge game against Nebraska-Kearney. 6 tackles, 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss. He also had a forced fumble and a fumble recovery in that 24-17 win. So I think 2 pretty good game balls handed out this week. Hopefully we have just as good NSIC action in this upcoming week. The Waterboy Award.
Oh no! We suck again!
Alright, now it's time for Corey's favorite part of the show, the Waterboy Award. Corey, who you got?
I got All-American Isaac Odom, who was a chump on Saturday's game. 20 carries for 50 yards, a net average of 2.5. Come on.
Oh, yeah, I know Central Washington was probably keying on him, but alright, he couldn't have been as bad as the Mary offense against Chadron State. 8 first downs, 91 yards passing, 6 yards rushing, 97 yards of total offense on the entire game. 3 points.
Okay, that is pretty pathetic.
Unnecessary roughness.
See that? That's your IQ, buddy. 0.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
Alright, now it's time for Unnecessary Roughness, where we take a look at the ugly side of football, and unfortunately, even though it is the NSIC, there is still an ugly side to football. But we'll be taking a look at D2 columnist from the South Atlantic Conference, Scott McCain. He wrote an article last week previewing the Winona State-Carson Newman game, in which he referred to last year's game in which Winona State won by a fluke, is what he basically said. It was a fluke win. Even in the following article this week, where he previews Carson Newman's game against Bentley, he even didn't really give that much credit to Winona State for their win. Corey, what was your opinion of Mr. McCain's article?
He's obviously a little biased towards the South Atlantic Conference, but even after WSU beating them again in their home field, he still gives WSU very little credit for coming in and playing solid ball. One of the comments he made was, the Eagles gave away 3 possessions within scoring range, or WSU took them away. And without those turnovers, it's fairly certain that the home team could have scraped together enough points for the win. I know WSU could have made the score a little higher if they didn't have to settle for a field goal within the 5-yard line on the first possession and missing a chip shot field goal in the third. So it could have went both ways, but he failed to mention that.
I completely agree with you. If he would have mentioned that, you know, the final score might have been 31-24 WSU. So I agree with you there. Overall, I think it was just cheap of him to do that. He didn't have to come out and say last year's win was a fluke. He was setting himself up as soon as he said that. And I'm not going to say it was motivation for WSU to win, because I highly doubt the players and coaches read what these columnists say. But at the same time, I'm sure if a fan reads this, mentions it to a player, I'm sure it does fire him up to win the game. So essentially, I think Scott McCain, all he was doing was setting himself and his team up for a loss. That's all I'm going to say.
I wonder if he rolled that piece of paper up he talked about and ate it. Carson Newman got over 100 yards rushing, but they still lost to WSU.
Conference honors.
He's gotta be pleased with that. The crowd is just on its feet here.
Alright, now it's time to reveal our NSIC Players of the Week. Offensive Player of the Week went to Chase Vogler, quarterback from UM-Duluth. He improved his record to 11-1 as a starter in a 35-10 victory over number 5 Central Washington. Vogler went 9 of 18 for 183 yards and a TD, along with 69 yards rushing on 6 carries. Defensive Player of the Week went to Wayne State defensive end Richard Daniel. Daniel recorded 6 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery in a 24-17 win over Nebraska Kearney. Special Teams Player of the Week went to Winona State kick returner Curtis Dewberry. Dewberry had a 63-yard kickoff return that set up a Warriors touchdown. He had 2 kick returns for 40.5-yard average, as well as 59 yards rushing in a 24-21 victory over Carson Newman. The Top 25.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Alright, time to take a look at this week's Top 25 polls, starting with the AFCA poll. 4 NSIC teams make it into this week's rankings. UM-Duluth jumped up 1 spot from number 4 to number 3 after defeating number 5 Central Washington. MSU-Mankato jumps from number 21 to number 18 despite having an off week. Winona State makes its debut at number 24 after defeating number 9 Carson Newman. And Wayne State College also makes its debut, claiming the last spot at number 25 after knocking off number 13 Nebraska Kearney. In the D2Football.com poll, only 2 NSIC teams are ranked, as UM-Duluth claims the number 3 spot and Winona State claims the number 24 spot. The game plan.
Without disappointment, you can't appreciate victory.
You lack discipline.
This is the setting for the greatest story ever told.
Alright, now it's time to take a look at our upcoming games in the NSIC this week. The first game of note will be Thursday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. as MSU-Mankato will host Northern State in non-conference action. The Mavericks are coming off a 10-2 season after losing to Hillsdale in the second round of the Division II playoffs. Also at 6 p.m., Crookston kicks off their season against Mayville State. Crookston is coming off a 1-10 season with their only win coming against this same Mayville State squad. The official NSIC conference play opens up at 6 p.m. Thursday when Northern State travels to Southwest Minnesota State. The Mustangs are coming off a 5-6 season while the Wolves return from a 2-9 2009 campaign. On Saturday, NSIC play continues with a big game. At 1 p.m., Augustana will host St. Cloud State in an important opening day battle, as both teams will be in the hunt for a conference title. St. Cloud has been the face of some controversy with the possibility of the football team being cut from the SCSU program even after coming off a 7-4 season. The Vikings are coming off an 8-4 year after finishing third in the NSIC in 2009. Also at 1 p.m., Minot State will travel to Concordia-St. Paul for their second taste of NSIC football. Minot State will join the NSIC next season and come off a 24-7 loss to Bemidji State. This is the Golden Bears' season opener as they come off a 3-8 2009 season. Upper Iowa will kick off the nightcap at 6 p.m. as they travel to Texas A&M Commerce for their season opener. The Peacocks are coming off a 3-8 season as well. The final buzzer.
I give you our champion!
And with that, we've come to the end of our first NSIC Sports and More podcast. I'd like to thank Corey Schell for coming in the studio to give us his picks and insight. Next week, I plan on bringing in Chris Kaufman, a Minnesota State insider, to give us his thoughts about this year's Minnesota State Mankato team. And with that, I'd like to thank you for tuning in this week and to tune in every Wednesday for the NSIC Sports and More podcast. I'm Adam Stanek, and I'm looking forward to another great week of NSIC sports.